Praise be to God, there is no other God except God. Our dearest Quranist, or Quran-only follower, congratulations for being among the few people in the world who have realized something extremely important. You have realized that the only religious book for our religious decisions should be the Quran. This is really a fundamental, important truth which we believe and appreciate. The Quran alone method is the correct method of approaching religion, or the correct process of religious thinking. It's actually the sister method of the scientific method. The scientific method is the method or tool through which we find the truth about material things or things of this world only using a specific set of collected data while disregarding all hearsay. Similarly, the Quran alone method is the method or tool through which we find the truth about religious things or things of the other worlds by only using the Quran as the only set of data or information, while disregarding the hearsay and opinions outside of it. And in theory, both these methods are perfect. But when people try to apply them in practice, they encounter some challenges. The challenge with the scientific method is that to do science with a limited budget, they have to simplify their study and often end up having to reach conclusions from data which are not detailed enough. On the other hand, religious students have fully detailed data, the Quran, but now their challenge is that due to so many details, they do not have sufficient time, sufficient brain power, or sufficient will, or sufficient sincerity to cover all of it, and more often than not, they reach conclusions without complete coverage of the Quran. And this creates problems, because when the Quran alone followers are reaching conclusions without covering the whole Quran, they reach conclusions by covering different parts of the Quran and different parts of the Quranic truths, because each of them notices different things from Quran and pays attention to some truths more than others. And then the conclusion which one individual might reach from the Quran is different, at least partially, from the other one. And now we have two individuals who understand the Quran differently, snowballing into a bigger problem later. Let's take an example to see how this happens. In Surah 2, verse 278, the Quran prohibits what in Arabic is called riba. Now, one group of Quran-only followers have reached the conclusion that riba is all types of interest. The second group of Quran-only followers have concluded that riba is only interest above 20%. The third group of Quran-only followers have concluded that riba is only the percentage of interest above inflation. The fourth group of Quran-only followers have concluded that riba is only the interest charged on the poor who are seeking a loan to avoid poverty, but it does not include interest charged on a non-poor person taking the loan for other purposes. The fifth group of Quran-only followers have concluded that riba is only the interest charged by one individual to another, but not when state-approved bank institutions do it. The sixth group of Quran-only followers have concluded that riba includes charging interest on others, but it does not include being charged interest by others. The seventh group of Quran-only followers have concluded that riba and interest are two completely different things. The eighth group of Quran-only followers have concluded that riba is only if the total amount of the loan repaid is more than twice as much as the loan which was received. Now, all of these 8 groups will actually show you a verse or two, or a meaning of an Arabic word in the Quran or two, or some kind of analogy, or the context in which the verse occurs, based on which they reach the conclusion. Yet, they still reached different conclusions because their knowledge of the Quran was partial. Due to their time limitations, they based their conclusions on some verses, but not on all of the verses of the Quran. As a result, 8 Quranist groups are created just based on this issue. If we add another issue to the discussion, then each of those 8 groups would reach about 8 other conclusions. And so now we would have about 64 separate Quranist groups. And then once another issue is discussed, and then another, after 6 issues are open for discussion, the Quranists are split into 262,000 groups, basically each individual ending up alone by himself. Then what is the solution to this practical problem? Should we just force other Quran alone followers to understand the Quran like we do and go against verse 256, which tells us that there should be no compulsion in religion? Should we hide our own conclusions, which we reach from the Quran, just so that we can fit within a group of Quran alone followers? In which case, we wouldn't be Quran alone followers at all, because we would be giving other people's opinion priority over what we ourselves are convinced to have found in the Quran. Should we constantly dispute with one another and go against verse 846, which tells us not to dispute with one another? Or should we solve this issue like the Sunnis by writing an official set of books on how to understand the Quran, basically creating new hadith, and then we wouldn't be Quran alone followers anymore because we would rely on other books? Or should we solve it like the Shia by choosing an official line of leaders who would then tell us how to understand the Quran, which again wouldn't let us be Quran alone followers anymore? So what is the solution? Well, guess what? The solution to this problem is already written in the Quran. According to the Quran, we, the Quran alone followers, should seek to reach an agreement between us for only two things, while for the rest of the religious issues, we don't have to agree. It would be nice to agree on everything, and we would if everyone was a perfect believer, but it's totally okay if we don't, because every human being today is a partial believer, as the Quran itself predicts in verse 42:14. So let everyone have their own opinion, because that is not going to divide the community if we stay connected through those two things. So what are those two things about which we must reach a common agreement? They are, one, the contact prayer, salat, and two, the obligatory charity, zakat. These are the only two things about which we should reach an agreement in order to consider each other part of the same religion. This idea is found in many Quran verses, like verse 9:11, for example. Verse 9:11 says that if they, the idol worshippers, turn away from idol worship, which the Quran alone followers have already done, and they do, one, the contact prayer, salat, and two, the obligatory charity, zakat, then they are your brothers in religion. They belong in the same religion. So the contact prayer and the obligatory charity make us part of the same religion, part of the same religious group. And then it's fine if we have differences of opinion on other issues. Even David and Solomon had a difference of opinion about something, as we see in verse 21:79. But it didn't divide them, because at the end of the day, they still went together to do the contact prayer, salat, and collected the zakat in one common pool to spend it in the cause of God. So it's forgivable if we have different opinions on other issues, because not all of us have the time and the patience and the knowledge, and sometimes even the readiness or the complete sincerity to analyze every issue to the point of reaching a complete understanding about it. Verse 73:20 in the Quran tells us to simply read the portions of the Quran which you find easy, which means that not all people will be able to read and understand the Quran completely. As a result, they will not have a completely correct opinion about many issues, but that's fine. The verse says, God has pardoned you. He knows that some of you may be ill, others may be busy with business, seeking God's provisions, and so on. It again says that it's okay to just read whatever portion of the Quran you can, basically a partial understanding of the truth. But then it says, as long as all of you do the contact prayer, salat, and give the obligatory charity, zakat. And there's another verse which conclusively confirms this idea. Verse 98:5 says, nothing else was asked from those who were given the scripture, which includes those who were given the Quran, except worshiping God sincerely within the correct religion. And one, doing the contact prayer, salat, and two, giving the obligatory charity, zakat. This is the perfect religion. So the perfect religion is the one where you do not demand from the others to agree on other issues, except to do the contact prayer, salat, and give the obligatory charity, zakat. If we want to think of it the other way around, this means that just because someone uses the Quran alone like you do and agrees on some other issues, that doesn't make him your friend. He is only your friend if he uses the Quran alone and does the contact prayer like you do and does the zakat like you do. Verse 5:55 in the Quran says that your only friends or your only allies or the only ones who are in the same group as you are God and His Messenger and the believers who observe the contact prayer and give the obligatory charity, and they bow down. And this unites the community of believers through a specific divinely authorized Quranic method. And you can get an idea of how this works because one of the contact prayers, according to the Quran, is the Friday prayer, which is used as a tool to keep the community united. You can even translate it in English as the uniting prayer or the congregation prayer. This is what keeps the congregation intact. So if you are a true Quran alone follower, please stop seeking unity through other means. It's just the contact prayer and the zakat, and this will unite us. And by the way, being united is not optional. It's an obligation in order to succeed. According to verse 3:200, the believers must be united in order to succeed. So the Quran alone followers cannot succeed unless they are united. And they cannot be united unless they agree to unite through the contact prayer and the obligatory charity only, while letting everyone have the freedom to decide for themselves about other issues. And in order to be able to agree to have united contact prayers and united obligatory charity, first we have to agree what is the correct common form of the contact prayer, salat, and obligatory charity, zakat. And guess what? You are very lucky, because for the first time in history, we have been able to extract all the details of the salat and the zakat directly from the Quran, all of them. You can find them in 2 of our videos. The links to both videos are below in the video description. So please watch those 2 videos in full, where you will be able to see all the details of the contact prayer directly from the Quran in one video, and all the details about zakat directly from the Quran in the other video. And then please write to us so you can join our community. And joining our community is an obligation if you are a believer, because in verse 18:27, God is directly talking to the Quran alone followers, and then in the next verse, while still speaking to the Quran alone followers, God says, restrain yourself with those who call on their Lord morning and evening. Basically, those who do the contact prayer. So to be a complete Quran-only believer, you must also apply this verse, which tells you to join us who do the contact prayer correctly. And there are many verses which tell us to stay united and do the contact prayer together and have the zakat system together. The Quran says that our community is one united community. You cannot be separate from the community and still think that you are following Quran alone. The Quran tells you to be part of the community of the submitters. Verse 41:33 in the Quran tells you to be one of the submitters. It doesn't tell you to be a submitter on your own. It tells you to be one of the submitters, one person in a larger community of the submitters, the only community of the submitters. There can only be one community of the submitters according to verse 21:92, and we are that community. The submitters are the best and the only officially authorized community of Quran alone followers. Verse 3:19 says that the only religion approved by God is submission. And to join submission, to be a submitter, all you have to do, since you are already a Quran only follower, all you have to do is do the contact prayer as we do and the obligatory charity as we do. And you are free to think differently on other issues. But regarding salat and zakat, you have to do them like us, and when available, with us, so that you can be part of the best community of Quran alone followers. We, the submitters, are the best community of Quran only followers. So again, to learn how to do the salat and the zakat, please watch the 2 videos linked in the video description below. And then once you learn them, please contact us as soon as possible to join us, or if you have any questions, you can contact us through our email address and our WhatsApp number, which are also given in the video description below. We are looking forward to hearing from you, and peace be upon you.